The crimson glow of the distress beacon cast an ominous hue across the command deck. Sergeant Nova gripped her rifle, steadying her nerves as the first wave approached. Through the viewport, a dark swarm blotted out the stars, thousands of glittering carapaces closing in. "Steady now!" she barked, bracing for impact. Her squad fanned out, covering all angles of approach. They were the last line of defense for this vital outpost. If it fell, an entire sector would be cut off, left blind and helpless. Nova squared her shoulders, pushing down any doubts. The mission came first, whatever the cost. She checked her weapon one last time, letting her gaze linger on the photos tucked inside her armor. Reminders of who she was fighting for. A brighter future, even if she might not live to see it. The deck shuddered as the first scouts arrived, barbed limbs scraping ominously along the hull. Nova spotted a weak point in the barricade and repositioned her team to shore up the gap. They poured fire into the swarm, but for every insect blown apart, 3 more took its place. It was an unceasing tide. "Fall back!" Nova ordered through gritted teeth. They retreated steadily, buying precious minutes with flesh and blood. The bugs probed every crevice, ruthless in their singular drive to overwhelm this outpost. Nova's heart pounded, knowing time was short. A sudden wrenching groan of metal signaled the barricade's collapse. The swarm surged through, relentless as a flood. The horde of chittering insects flooded through the breached barricade, a nightmarish wave threatening to consume everything in its path. Sergeant Nova and her squad unleashed torrents of fire, cutting down the first ranks of the relentless swarm. But it was not enough. More came, an endless, undulating tide that quickly surrounded them. Their guns grew hot in their hands as the last of their ammunition was spent. One by one, Nova's soldiers fell beneath the tide, dragged down in a flurry of slashing limbs and gnashing mandibles. Nova fired until her rifle clicked empty, then drew her sidearm and kept shooting even as the bugs swarmed over her legs. She screamed defiance, raging against the dying of the light. Finally, as the last of her squad fell silent, Nova dropped to her knees. The bugs swirled around her, ready for the final blow. With blood and sweat stinging her eyes, Nova gazed up at the pulsing crimson distress beacon overhead. She had failed. The outpost would fall. But she whispered a silent prayer that somehow, someday, humanity would endure and overcome this horrific threat. As the swarm enveloped her, Nova thought of home and the faces of her loved ones. She hoped her sacrifice here would spare them from the coming darkness. Then, the bug's barbs pierced her heart and her vision faded to black. The last beacon went dark. In the cold void of space, the swarm moved on, unstoppable and uncaring. Nova's broken body lay still amidst the wreckage, her blood congealing beneath the now dead distress beacon. Humanity's first and last line of defense had been swept away, leaving only this hollow graveyard floating in the endless night.